Back in session, are free to come back in the courtroom, please. Give Mr. Turner in, please.
May we approach for a second?
Yes, sir. Dennis Evans. Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner, I apologize. State just informed me they were printing out a PowerPoint presentation. It might take a few minutes, so it'll be a few minutes before we resume. So you can step back in the holding cell, and we'll start shortly, sir. Thank you, sir. You may call the court into recess, everyone. the record is continuation, State of Tennessee versus Billy Turner. Ms. Turner is present. All trial counsel are present. Are both sides ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Dave Smith, you can bring in the jury, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Ms. Turner, you can have a seat if you want to. And once the jury comes in, you can sign up, but you don't have to keep signing until they get here. It might be a few minutes. They might not even be lined up yet. Yes, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone can be seated. State of Tennessee, you may call your next witness.
Dennis Evans.
Call Dennis Evans, please. Dennis Evans. Mr. Evans, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Evans, come up to Seal of Shelby County, right with Deputy Smith to sign in, please. And once you get there, if you hand him the item that you have in your hand,
Yes, sir.
come up to Deputy Smith, please. Put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you will give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. You have the document back. Have a seat here, please, sir, and watch your step, please. Mr. Hagerman, you may proceed.
I told one witness this before, and that was to get comfortable. I've got to tell you the same thing, okay?
Yes, sir.
So get comfortable up there. You may be here for a bit. State your name for the court, please.
Dennis Evans, Jr.,
Spell the name for the record, please.
Dennis Evans.
And how are you employed?
With the City of Memphis for the Memphis Police Department
How long have you been a Memphis police officer?
since July 2001, so going on 21 years.
Well, what do you presently do for the Memphis Police Department?
So I'm assigned to the Digital Forensic Unit, so we are based out of the Investigative Services.
And what does the digital forensic unit do?
So there's 4 of us. Our main focus is to handle all the phones and search warrants related to cell phone records, Google search warrants. We do all the digital things there. We extract phone data. We do reports, or we work with our homicide unit, all our violent crimes units, and all our general investigation bureaus. So we average about 700 phones a year that we comes through our office.
How long have you been doing that for the Memphis Police Department?
So the digital forensic unit has been about 4 years, but I've been doing cell phone records and cell phone stuff with other various units, drug units, since 2008, so about 13 years.
You say cell phone stuff, and I want to be clear, all the different stuff that we're talking about, okay?
Yes, sir.
Number one, do you have occasion to extract information from a physical cell phone?
Yes.
And what would you call that?
So we would take an iPhone or an Android phone, and based on the investigator, they would either have a search warrant, or it would have to be a written consent, or if it's a homicide case, it could be a deceased victim. Once we've gotten that approval, then we would use software tools that we have to actually extract the data from those phones. And then we would use a different software tool to actually upload or analyze that data. So we're going to look at call logs. We're going to look at text messages. Everything you can do on your phone, we can just about see it. We can see pictures. We can see web history searches. We can see what applications you use. We can see if you signed up for Uber. We can see your email account. So we searched all that, and we use that data to then build a case and build a report we then provide to an investigator, either in homicide or different unit, and they use that for further future indictments and cases.
Have you had occasion to extract information from one phone or many phones?
Oh, many phones. We get about 7 to 10 phones a day, so we are constantly getting phones all the time.
Have you had occasion to attend training and receive special education with regard to extracting information from the cell phone?
Yes, sir. So training, I've done multiple different software trainings, so I'm Shara Wright certified, which is the tool we use. I've been trained with another tool called Gray Shift. I've also got an independent training where I'm certified through IASIS, which to be a mobile device. Actually, the term is Certified Mobile Device Examiner, and IASIS is International Associations of Computer and Investigative Specialists. So that's an independent training, independent of software. So it teaches us all our smartphones now are computers. So it teaches you how to go into that essentially computer and extract data and analyze it.
Is this training that you receive one time, or is this training that you keep up to date along with the technology and changes?
So every 2 years with Shara Wright, we get recertified. So as far as with Shara Wright training, I mean, my first certification with them was in 17. And then every 2 years since then, I've been recertified through Shara Wright and through other training. Right now, my current certification for IASIS is through 2024. We got certified through them last year. So we are constantly watching webinars, watching training. Everything changes with computers and smartphones on a weekly, monthly, annual basis. So we keep up with the times.
And I'm going to have you educate us on how cell phones work and the various things that we're talking about. We said cell phone stuff, and we've talked about extracting information from a particular phone. Is that
Yes.
right? How about phone records?
So phone is half the battle. So you have your cell phone, but then you have your actual cell phone records from your service provider, your carrier, AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile. So what we have investigators do is we have them request through records requests, search warrants, court orders to get these phone records. So these phone records will come back from a carrier. They're going to show us the direction of a call. So they're going to show if I made a call to this gentleman here, it would show that I made that call. It would also show a date and timestamp. It will show a duration of the call. It'll show things like the cell towers that are used for the call. So you can have a starting tower and an ending tower. Most carriers will not provide the towers in the middle, meaning if you got on a call right here downtown and drove to Collierville, you may hit 15 towers. We're going to see the first call and the last call. The first tower and the last tower. We would then get an address for the physical tower. It'll tell us what side of the tower was used by the antenna. And then we can map all that out using different software programs, or we also map it out by hand. So we can actually go in there and put the GPS of the tower, look at the width, the beam width, and how far out the azimuth, and start to map things out about where people were when they were making phone calls.
Have you received first training with regard to doing those things? For looking at the phone records, looking at tower locations, and figuring those things out?
Yes, sir. So we started out back in 2008. I was trained on a software program that we're going to talk about today called PinLink. PinLink actually is a program we use to map out and analyze cell phone records, not cell phones themselves. Independent of that, we've been to different training through a company called PATC Tech, where they've actually trained us independently on how to analyze records using, we can use Excel, we can use different programs to look at records and see where things are and what people are doing. So yes, sir.
Have you had occasion first to do that in various real investigations?
Yes, sir. So starting out in 2008, I was assigned to the drug unit. From there, I worked almost 5 or 6 years with the drug unit. And we started out looking at cell phone records there. I also worked on a gun unit, PSN, Project Safe Neighborhoods, where we would go out and try and track wanted parties. I transitioned into actually writing wiretaps, so I'm certified with the state of Tennessee to be able to write wiretaps, and we did wiretap investigations for about 6 years. With that is a lot of legwork on the front end, where you will do tower and call records on your potential suspect or who you're looking at. So I've analyzed that. We've also had help, or requested help from every agency around Memphis. We've helped Germantown, Collierville, we've helped the feds, we've helped ATF, we've helped DEA, FBI. So we venture out into all across Shelby County to help with cell phone records and cell phones themselves.
Have you ever been called on to testify as an expert in digital forensic examination?
Yes, sir. I've testified in both state court and federal court. So I testified on wiretaps in federal court. I testified on phone records in federal court. I testified both on phone records, wiretaps, and phones themselves in state court.
And have you testified with regard to phone records, tower locations, and interpreting location?
Yes, sir, I have.
As an expert?
Yes, sir.
In various courts?
Yes, sir.
One time or many times?
Many times. Well, I get a subpoena about every other week. I had 2 trials this week.
Your Honor, I tendered Dennis Evans as an expert in forensic digital examination.
Mr. Perry.
Brief point, Your Honor. if I
Yes,
may.
sir, you may proceed.
Mr. Edwards.
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Evans.
Yes, sir.
I apologize, sir. Mr. Evans, most of your testimony has been provided on behalf of the state,
Yes, sir.
and you've been with Memphis Police Department how long?
21 years.
Okay. I don't have any further, Your Honor, and no challenge to his expertise.
Ms. Evans, is it Mr. Officer what?
Sergeant.
Sergeant, I apologize.
I apologize as well, Your Honor.
That's okay. Yes, sir. Sergeant Evans, give me, if I were to put your expertise in a capsule, what it would be? Is it digital
It's
forensics?
digital forensics with also doing cell phone records. So we
Digital
an-
forensics and cell phone records examinations?
Yes, sir. So we analyze cell towers, cell phone records.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make sure I got it right.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to declare to you that Dennis Evans, Sergeant Dennis Evans Jr., is an expert in his field of digital forensics and cell phone records examinations. And as with the earlier 2 witnesses, a person qualified as an expert based on that person's training, education, background, and experience can be allowed to testify to you in the form of opinions and give you reasons for those opinions. And the court, in fact, has qualified Sergeant Dennis Evans Jr. as an expert in his field of digital forensics, cell phone records, and examinations. You may proceed, Mr. Hagerman.
I go by Mr. Edwards. Is fine.
Yes, sir.
Can I pass forward this to Mr. Evans, please?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize, this is a PowerPoint document, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Is that something you recognize?
Yes, sir. I prepared this document for this
Prepare
trial.
it in preparation for your testimony in court today?
Yes, sir, I did.
Would it aid in your presentation today?
Yes, sir, it will.
And does it include information with regard to phone records, location information, and other things of that nature in the homicide of Lorenzen Wright?
Yes, sir, it does.
You're honored to offer that to evidence this time.
And Mr. Perry, I know Mr. Thomas, any objections to this offer of proof?
No objection, Your Honor.
This would be exhibit number 70. And this is a documented report. Not going to count the pages at this time, but it's multiple pages, probably in something in the range of about 70-ish, and I will count them at some point to make the record complete. Testified by Sergeant Evans as the Memphis Police Department Digital Forensic Unit Analysis Report, exhibit number 70.
scanned in, so we're able to publish it on the overhead here.
Yes, sir.
I know how it's hard to read from far away, so we also have copies of at least the first 70 pages. I think the report may be 80 pages total.
Yes, sir.
There are copies of the first 70 pages for the jury, if I can distribute those.
Absolutely. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I said I was not going to count it right there, but Mr. Hagerman has. So it's 80 pages. And Deputy Smith is going to give you copies of what is Exhibit 70. Again, you may include that in your jury notebooks. Do not give any greater significance to the fact that you have that item, Exhibit 70, in your possession. You would give it the same weight and consideration as you do everything else. But that's been provided to you that once you start deliberating, if you have a question about that document, you'll have the document of your own to look at rather than having to share the document among 12 people. So the Exhibit 70, do not place any greater emphasis on it because it will be included in your notebooks. Deputy Smith. You want to give one to the court reporter? She'll gladly take one, and I'll gladly take one also, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hagerman, you may proceed.
All right, Sergeant Evans, cell phone technology overview. I guess everybody's got one, and I have no idea how it works, so
Okay.
take us through that.
So we're going to start, before we get into diving into these records, I want to take a few minutes to just kind of give an overview of cell phone technology so that you kind of understand what I'm saying when we start talking about towers and antennas and heads and what the importance of that is. And so in the first page, we've got, you can click through two. Keep going. So these are just pictures of cell towers. Now, these are not the towers that we're referring to in this case, okay? So I want to get that clear. But this shows you what a cell tower looks like. Most of us have seen this driving around town. If we're looking at the white pieces, those are the antennas, and then the triangular piece around it would be the head. So each cell tower is going to have a head and then multiple antennas on it. Those antennas are what are going to make up a sector, okay? That sector is essentially a radio wave that's going out. If you picture a flashlight, hold that flashlight out, the light's bright, went right next to it, it gets dimmer as it goes out.
Do you have a fancy laser pointer?
I do.
Should you bring it?
I did.
Yours work on that TV.
We'll see.
This is a trick, I was going to trick.
No.
Right at that.
No, sir, it doesn't.
I'll see that? Show the laser pointer on the TV.
It's over there. No.
It disappears on the
It
TV.
disappears on the
It's
south side of
amazing.
TV.
Yeah.
I've got a fancier stick.
Okay.
All right, so what are the components of this tower again?
So if we're looking at the white pieces, those are the antennas. And then that triangular piece that the antenna is connected to would be considered, it's called the head.
That triangular base thing?
Yes, sir. So it goes into three sides. That one he's pointing to, you have three sectors. So the cell tower is going to go 360 degrees in a circle, and then the sectors are divided in three different sides. So you can go next. So the cell tower itself is not, the tower is not the center of the hexagon. So what they're doing is those sides or sectors are making up like a honeycomb. So the black piece in there in the middle is actually the head, and then around it is going to be your hexagon or your honeycomb and the actual towers, the actual antennas waves going out, which is going to create. Next page. So we also need to talk about what they call side load and rear load. So what that means is if you're pointing to the center where that V is at, you're going to have coverage for that sector of the tower that's facing north or facing 0 behind it. Okay? So it's not a perfect V. There's going to be some radio waves going behind it or to the side of it. So that's your side lobe and your rear lobe.
So when we were looking at that honeycomb pattern, the one before,
Yes.
and we're looking at that, you're talking about like the coverage of the tower?
Yes, sir. So your coverage is not a perfect, you're going to see triangles in our presentation and endpoints. That's not a true representation. That's just to give you a visual of the direction that tower and that radio wave is pointing. And so what this is telling you is that it's also pointing behind it and beside it. So everything's going to cross over. We'll see that here in just a second. Next. So Focus on the bottom where it says 3-sector deployment. And again, you can see your 0 going around to 360. 180 is the directly bottom of it. Every sector is going to interact or intercross, so they're going to have overage. We have to think of cell phone companies, they're a business, okay? They don't do this for law enforcement. They don't want to drop a call. So there's going to be coverage overlap, so that if you go from one side of the tower to the other, you don't drop your call. There's not a straight line that says, okay, sector 1 cuts off here and sector 2 starts here. It's going to all overlay itself. So that's what that's showing you.
So are we going to see straight lines later sort of demarcating the various sectors?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, but are those straight lines, well, I'm getting from you, are those straight lines approximations versus actually straight in reality?
Yes, sir. So the antenna is going to tell us a beam width, but our straight lines, there is overage on each side of that. So it's not like it just cuts off. And that's really what you're going to see is there to show you the direction that the antenna is pointing. Next. So this is more of a representation of what a cell tower actually looks like. So if you take your stick and point to kind of the, I don't know if you can reach it, right there, that one. So the one below it you started with. So if you look at the green sector there, that's more of your coverage. And you can see how it starts to trickle, and actually it can play and go over to the neck, go down, straight down, there you go. So that's actually all water in there in the middle. But this just shows you that cell towers they're not pretty perfect little triangles, okay? They're almost more like a blob in a sense that they're gonna go a little bit behind it, a little bit beside it, and they're gonna cross over each other.
So I don't know where this is. Let's say I'm sitting here with a cell phone right in the middle of all this green right here.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you say coverage, do I gotta be using my cell phone?
For the purpose of these records, yes, we only got records based on voice calls, so they will only indicate when they're being used.
And so if I'm in the middle of this green sector here and I'm using my cell phone,
What that's indicating is that your cell phone is going to connect to the strongest signal, to the nearest tower,
which is gonna be this
which is
tower.
going to be that tower on that side of that
This
tower.
side.
So you're not going to be on the yellow side at the top left corner because it's not going to jump over there.
If I'm standing here in the yellow using the cell phone, voice call, whatever, I'm gonna be on this tower and I'm gonna be on this side of the tower.
Yes, sir. More than
I'm
like,
not gonna be like up here in the purple.
you're not going to jump multiple towers.
Over
no,
here
sir.
on the green.
You're connected to that tower. Now, there can be at times, if you're talking about a Memphis Grizzlies game, and you got 20,000 people at a game, the side of the sector for the stadium could be overloaded. So you could then bounce to the other side of that same tower, but you're actually at the Grizzlies game because they're gonna move it to the other side. So there are occasions where you can go to a different side of the tower, but you're not going to jump from the yellow all the way up to the very tip top right corner of that page and hit a tower up there. You're not going to jump towers.
If I've got, we're playing the Liberty Bowl or something right here and there's 100,000 people right here, I'm using my cell phone.
Yes, sir.
You know, I may actually get sent to this tower.
It may show us that you're in the green when you're actually in the yellow, yes. But you're not going to jump from there to the very tip top tower.
That would be something exceptional, it would have to be some sort of crazy.
You just would drop the call. It wouldn't connect your call.
Now, I think this is what I was asking earlier about sort of bleed over approximation. If I'm right at the very edge of this green,
Yes, sir.
would the expectation be I'd be on this tower here?
Yes.
But is there a possibility I could show on this yellow tower here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these straight lines aren't like the boundaries between countries or something like this?
No,
These straight lines are approximations?
Yes, sir. It goes more off, you have to think about buildings. So downtown Memphis, your cell tower is not going to reach as far as if you're out off 385 close to Mississippi where it's wide open. So there's nothing interfering that radio wave or that flashlight again. If you did a flashlight right here, this is blocking it. So that can all determine on the strength of the tower and how far out it reaches. And also topography, hills, trees, buildings, that all plays a part in it.
So reasons for like bleed over or whatever it is I'm calling it could be like mountains or
Yes.
a lot of tall buildings or something like that.
Yes, sir.
But the expectation is if I'm in the green using my cell phone, I'm going to be on this tower on this side.
Yes, sir.
And if I'm in the yellow using my cell phone, I'm going to be on this tower on this side.
Yes, sir.
And if I'm in the purple, same thing.
Yes, sir.
But once I get close to these boundaries, things become less predictable. Is that
Yes,
fair?
yes, sir, they are. We would have to do a different test to determine exactly the strength or the signal to determine that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, we didn't have that technology in 2010, so that wasn't done. But if we were going to do that today, we would do what's called a drive test. We would go out and actually test the signal strength of that tower, and it looks more like a blob than a square, than a triangle. So moving on. So just a few things to remember. The coverage is never perfect. Like we said, the range can depend on population, it can depend on terrain, it can depend on number of towers, it can, and other variables. Meaning that if you're hitting the tower that covers 201 Poplar, you're not gonna, if you're at 201 Poplar using your cell phone, you're not gonna jump 12 towers to something that's out in Midtown. You're gonna be in this area on this tower.
Were you asked to examine records on this case, the death of Lorenzen Wright?
Yes, sir, I was.
You have certain dates listed here, July 18th, the 19th, and the 20th, and the 21st, and those are dates that have been talked about or will be talked about in the trial. This report is going to contain analysis with regard to some of these dates, is that right?
Yes, sir. So we got records pertaining, we got records all over. We got records that are for a month. So we've got records that are for 10 days. Some records are for 7 days. But we're going to focus in on all those records on primarily these 4 days, which would be the day, the 18th before the homicide, the 19th of the homicide, and then the 2 days following.
If you can advance to the next slide, I think you brought this up. This is some of the things I need to ask you about so we're all on the same page. Were cell phone records obtained as part of the original investigation?
Yes, sir, they were. So the original homicide unit in 2010 obtained records for not only the 4 people listed here today, but a lot of records. They were getting records on all kinds, every lead they could get. Yes, sir.
These are records that they obtained in 2010, is that right?
Yes, sir, they obtained these records.
Do cell phone companies retain records forever?
No, sir. So looking here, you've got Billy Turner's records were from C-Spire. C-Spire has actually changed names. Jimmy Martin is from Verizon. Shara Wright's from AT&T, and Lorenzen Wright's from AT&T. So AT&T retains their records for 7 years. So they're the longest. That's not done for police purposes. That's done more for marketing. So they know where to put things and what's going on. Verizon only retains records for 18 to 19 months. C-Spire is the same way. It's about 2 years. So most cell phone carriers only retain data for about 2 years.
And if I'm right, you were brought into this investigation in 2016-17, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you were in the, I'm assuming, unfortunate position of being stuck with whatever records were obtained in 2010 and not much more.
Yes, sir.
If you could travel back to 2010 and request cell phone records for these 4 people, would you have requested more records than you had inherited in 2016?
We train our homicide and criminal and investigators to get minimum 3 to 6 months, especially on suspects or victims. We want to get 3 to 6 months of records to be able to establish what we consider a pattern of life. So if I just got a record for a week, I really can't tell a pattern of life. I can't tell if the suspect maybe called the victim a month and a half ago because I only got a week worth of records. So we always instruct and teach our investigators minimum 3 months. On high profile cases, I would have gone back 6 months to a year. And I would have justified that in a search warrant because I need to know the pattern of life. And I don't know what was going on prior to a homicide. So we would always ask for more records.
Because once time passes, you're not in a position where you can go back and ask the cell phone company for more. Because oftentimes they're gone.
Yes, sir. After 18 months to 2 years, the phone companies will purge those records, and we do not have access to them.
So for instance, if I'm looking at your list here, Billy Turner, did you have records from Billy Turner for the month before this happened in June of 2010?
No, sir. The records that I analyzed were only for July 5th, 2010 to August 5th, 2010. So it was 1 month of records.
So just 1 month of records is all you had to go on?
Yes, sir.
With regard to Billy Turner?
Yes, sir.
And you said something else to me about the records on Mr. Turner. Were there other things you would have requested with regard to his records that were different than what you inherited?
So what we train and teach our investigators is to always ask for voice, text message data, which would be you actually using your phone to go to Facebook, social media, do a Google search. In this instance, all the records we have for Mr. Turner are voice records. So I do not have a complete picture. I don't have text message records. I only got voice records that are in the records that were provided to me.
Right. So for Billy Turner, we only have July.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And for Billy Turner, we only have his voice records, which would mean an actual phone call,
Yes, sir.
versus a text, which would show up as a text record or data record or whatever they
We
call
would
it.
call it, yes, sir. It would show up as an instant message or a message record.
Jimmy Martin, did you have Jimmy Martin records from June, for instance?
No, sir. Again, we only got right around the time of the murder. The homicide at that time only requested about a month's worth of records in July.
So you don't have Jimmy Martin's records from June, for
No,
instance? Shara Wright's records?
We actually got more records on her and more records on Lorenzen than the others because AT&T retains them for longer.
A more complete picture with regard to their two records?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm assuming, or one of the things you look at when you look at records, contact that the various parties have had with each other.
Yes, sir.
And you're able to obviously quantify that.
Yes, sir. I was asked to analyze the records and see how many times Billy Turner talked to Shara Wright. For that, we found 186 basically voice calls because we were basing this off of Billy Turner's records. So we found 186 calls between July 5th, 2010 and August 5th, 2010.
All right, so 186 voice calls between Billy Turner and Shara Wright over the course of 31 days, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Six a day. Calls between Billy Turner and Jimmy Martin
We found 17 calls on Mr. Turner's records.
with the same date range, is that correct?
Yes, sir. The date range from the July 5th to August 5th.
And since we're using Mr. Turner's records, are these all voice calls again?
Yes, sir, they are.
And then calls between Shara Wright and Jimmy Martin?
We found 65 calls. And we based that off of Shara's records. And that's where she talked to him between 6/28/2010 and then did not talk to him again on the records that we had after July 18, 2010.
All right, what am I looking at here?
So here we're starting the analysis of Mr. Turner's records. And so what we're looking at here is a breakdown from his subscriber record. So what a subscriber record is, when we get cell phone records, we ask for the subscriber. The subscriber is the individual that actually went to the cell phone carrier and actually got the account in their name. So what this is telling us, and what this is breaking down, is that Mr. Turner, his phone number was of course 901-239-3322. He first got those records, like I said, the records for us were from July 5th to August 5th. The account name was Billy Ray Turner. The account number is there listed. The activation date, so that's the date he actually went in and started his service with C-Spire, was 2004, 12/10/2004. And the address listed for that account was 7250 German Creek Park in Memphis, Tennessee. So that's just establishing that those records and that phone did belong to him. So we're going to move into the cell mapping for Mr. Turner on July 18, 2010 and July 19. You can go forward. So it's a little bit hard for you guys to read. What we've done here is we've marked these records from the time period of 7/18/2010 at 23:41 hours. So it's military time, it's 11:41 at night. That's on July 18th. Okay? And then if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th column marked down, you'll see start latitude, start longitude. Those are the records that we actually have cell towers for. And we're going to break down all these calls in the next couple slides with the actual towers. Now what we're also looking at here is that first call at 23:41 is an outgoing voice call to Jimmy Martin. Then
This is outgoing from Billy Turner's phone at 11:41 p.m. on the night of the 18th. Is that right?
yes, sir, it is.
If I'm reading it right, it lasts for 39 seconds.
Yes, sir, it did.
And it does not have the start latitude, start longitude. Why is that?
So these records from C-Spire do not all come with the cell tower data. And sometimes it could be that with C-Spire, there are two different technologies that they're utilizing. So when we don't see a start and stop or a start latitude, by the way, we only got the beginning tower for all these records. We didn't get the ending tower. And that could be based on the way the court order or the search warrant was written in 2010. So we're only seeing the starting tower that was used.
Starting towers means when I place the phone call.
When you pick up your phone,
that's where
dial
we
the
start
digits
off.
and hit send, it's going to connect to the tower that you're using. That's your start tower. If you drove around or when you get off the phone and hit end, that's going to be your ending
I
tower.
could end at a different tower, obviously.
Yes, sir. Or
I
it could
could
be,
hit-
or it could be the exact same tower.
Or I could hit towers in between if I'm moving around or something.
Yes, sir. But we're not going to see those on the records. Well, more than likely, what it is, this screenshot doesn't include it, but the call above it probably had tower location. So if you look at the call at 23:47 in 22 seconds, okay, and then you see the calls below that at 0 minutes after midnight, and 2 minutes after midnight, and 12 minutes after midnight. Those calls do not have start latitude or longitude either. And the reasoning behind that is the technology went from essentially 2G or 3G down to analog. So the carrier did not show those tower locations, and they tell us in the definitions page. When we get cell phone records, the carriers provide us a definitions page. I actually have a copy of it here. The definitions page explains to us what all is in these records. And how they told us in the definitions page is that we would have to base it off the last tower listed. So we would refer to the call at 23:47, and we would use that tower information for the 3 calls below it. Okay, a little confusing, but it doesn't show us the side of the tower. It just simply tells us the location of the tower that was used.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, I've got a list here of Billy Turner's calls from the night of the murder.
Yes, sir.
I've got some calls that do not show a start latitude or longitude.
Yes, sir.
And that may have to do with C-Spire and their network,
Yes, sir.
right? I have other calls that actually have a start latitude, start longitude.
Yes, sir.
From the calls that actually have the start latitude and start longitude, can I map the movement of Billy Turner's cell phone that night?
Yes, sir. We can map out the tower and the side and face of the tower that it was utilizing.
And from this list here, I see that 2 calls
Outgoing.
outgoing 11:41 to Jimmy Martin, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Outgoing voice call at 11:47 to Raven Faulkner, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You're aware that was a girlfriend of Mr. Turner's?
I wasn't aware of that. No, sir.
Incoming call 1 minute after midnight. Incoming call 2 minutes after midnight. And incoming call 12 minutes after midnight. From Batesville payphone Batesville payphone, Jimmy Martin.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, these calls have duration, and I see that all of these calls have short duration. 39 seconds, 42 seconds, 8 seconds, 30 seconds, 31 seconds, 29, 33, 2. But that's a 3 or an 8, a 3 or an
Yes, sir.
8. Does that duration mean that someone actually answered the phone and that Billy Turner was talking to Jimmy Martin for 39 seconds or 42 seconds?
Based on my experience, no, sir. With anything less than 45 seconds to a minute is usually is not answered. What we see doing numerous wiretap investigations and looking at thousands of call records, that is an indication that the phone was not answered.
So this duration, it reflects, I guess, one cell phone talking to another, but not necessarily two people talking to another.
No, sir. Yeah, it could reflect the phone ringing. So once you hit send and the phone starts to ring, it's going to ring, it's going to ring, it's going to ring, it's going to ring, and it's going to eventually go to voicemail. That could be your 25, 8, 42, 30 seconds. It's an indication that the phone was not answered.
So based on what you've seen, all of these short duration calls, it's more likely than not, people actually aren't talking, they're unanswered calls.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned this earlier, this is from Billy Turner's records, right?
Yes, sir. These are Mr. Turner's records.
And we're only seeing voice calls, we're not seeing text.
No, sir. We're not going to see. There's a text message between him and Shara Wright that's not in there, and we don't see it because it's not. We only receive voice calls.
But we know about that text message from Shara's records.
We're able to dump her cell phone. Yes, sir. We were able to retrieve that message, so I can look at that message and see a timestamp, and it's right around the time of 23:47 hours on the night of July 18th. But they're not in Mr. Turner's records because they didn't obtain them in 2010.
Because they only got voice and not text.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. You can proceed to the next slide.
Next. So here we're going to start actually showing the cell tower maps for those calls that we just looked at. So when we're looking at it, I've highlighted several things. We have our homicide scene. We have Mr. Turner's house. We actually have Shara's house.
All right, so let's orient. Got the stick for a reason, I guess.
So first we'll start off, this mapping is coming from our software program called Pinley. So like I said, I've been trained in that. I've utilized it since 2008. I've seen various versions of Pinley. To actually understand those dots, what we're doing there is we're dropping a pin. So I looked at Shara Wright's house, got her address, actually Google searched it, was able to get the GPS coordinates. I then put the GPS coordinates into the mapping software, and then that allowed me to drop a pin right on where her house is.
So Shara Wright's house here on
Yes.
Whisper Woods.
Yes. Then I did the same for Mr. Turner's house based on his actual subscriber record of the address that was on the subscriber record. Did the same thing there. And then I obtained the homicide scene GPS coordinates from the police report on the actual homicide. And so you're going to see this layout of this map for the next several slides. So you're going to see all these same orientations.
And how many, in this map, obviously I see these purple shaded parts, I know we're going to talk about that.
Yes, sir.
But how many cell phone towers am I looking at being depicted in this map? Is this?
You're looking at 3 cell phone towers. You're on
Is this a
one.
cell phone tower?
Yes, sir. That's one with showing 2 different sides of the tower. That's a separate tower, and that's the third tower. And so again, this is indicative of the purple triangle is not indicative of the actual tower cutoff. It's showing you what direction that tower is facing and where that coverage area is. And so when we're looking at that first call up there on the right, that call is actually showing that Mr. Turner went to Shara Wright's, or his phone is in an area using a cell tower that has coverage over Shara's house. We believed he went to her house prior to the murder on the 18th.
So I'm reading this, and at 12:42, that's 8:42 p.m., is that correct?
It's 2042? Yes, sir.
2042, I'm sorry, 2042. Billy Turner this was a phone call reflected in his records
Yes, sir, it is.
that had with it starting latitude and longitude, so we knew what tower it was.
Yes, sir, we did.
And were you also able to determine what side of the tower it was?
Yes, sir. So that tower is, on here, it's actually listed for, its tower is 109 for C-Spire. And then below that, you've got your azimuth and your beam width. So the 240 is indicative of 360 degrees. Point an arrow at 240. That's the direction that tower is going in. So the face of the antenna of that tower and the signal strength is going at the 240 degrees if we did a complete circle.
All right. And is this purple shade shows the approximate coverage of that side of the tower?
Yes, sir. So we set the default on this at 1.5 miles. And so, again, the end of that cone is not the end of the tower strength. It's just for representation of the direction that the tower goes.
Okay, so this purple area actually extends further out. It's just an approximation.
We would have to do that drive test to know for sure, but yes, sir, more than likely, it extends further out than just what is at the end of that cone.
So from the arrow, what I gather from this is that Mr. Turner's cell phone, when it was utilized at 8:42 p.m. that night,
Yes, sir.
the expectation is that it was, the likelihood is that it was within.
It's on the side of the
area.
tower that has coverage for Shara Wright's house.
And it's also where the same coverage areas of Shara Wright's house.
Yes, sir.
But you can't put this phone in Shara Wright's house, can you?
No, sir, I cannot.
And you can't say whether or not it's in the front yard or down the street.
No, sir, I cannot.
And would you agree with me that there's other houses in this area, is that right?
Yes, sir, there's also an interstate.
There's also an interstate. But Mr. Turner's phone is within the coverage area on this tower at 8:42, which does include Shara Wright's house.
Yes, sir.
Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
What
Next.
is this other purple? Is this just showing the other side of the tower?
You're fixing to see what?
Okay.
Next. So, our first call that we just saw was at 2042. The next call at 2054 shows the exact same tower, but a different side. So, again, it could be that we're close to that line where the coverage could go over. We could have, because we're on the interstate, we could have some overload, so it bounces to the other side. But that arrow here, in this call, just indicates that it's on the same tower, but this is showing it's on a different sector of that same tower. For this call, which is like 10 minutes later.
This is like 12 minutes
12.
later. Billy Turner's phone. And the expectation is that it's within the.
It's within that-
approximate, the shaded tower.
Yes, sir. It's within that area. What it is, when he's typically, what the records look like for him when he's over there, they're bouncing between the two sides. So one call may be on what's known as Sector 2. We're looking at Sector 2 there. That's Sector 2, yes, sir. If you look up there under Tower Face, under Memphis Nortel, you'll see 109/2. So that indicates it's the tower name and the side. Where if you look at the previous slide, he was on Sector 3. Yes, sir. So this is where the way that her home is positioned on the corner of Sector 3, if he's there or if the phone is in that area, it could bounce back and forth.
And again, it wouldn't necessarily be in her home.
It could be, yes,
But it's within these areas.
yes, sir. If we go to the next slide, you'll see what happens next. So now, at 2156, he's back on the 3 side.
So it's in the same area as the first call.
It's the exact same tower, it's the exact same face.
And that's at 9:56 p.m.
Yes, sir. So moving on, we now know that roughly 9:56 is the last call we have where he's in that area over in Collierville. And so now the next call is going to be at 22:52. And he's going to be utilizing the tower that's within about 2/10 of his house, 2/10 of a mile from his house. He's on this tower right here. Yes, sir.
He's here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is a tower that where his house is located?
Yes, sir. Actually, we ran a tower analysis, meaning we can take every tower that's in the 30 days worth of records, and then we can see which ones use the most, which ones use the least. That's the most used tower that's in his records. It's over 500 times.
Over 500 times that tower?
He's connected to that tower over 500 times in the 30 days that we had
Would
records.
be consistent of that being his home tower, what is that?
I would, yes, sir.
And that is at,
So he hits that tower for multiple calls. He's there. He's utilizing that cell tower for calls at 2252, 2313, 2343, 2347. Now, this is where when we looked at the, if you go back, Austin, can you go back to the slide with the actual records? That one. So we see at 2347, and then 1 minute after midnight, 2 minutes, and 12 minutes, there's no tower information. That's because it's referring back to the last known one at 2347. Go back forward now. Other way. One more. There. So this is why it says unknown side. All we can tell you, or all the records are telling us, is that he's using that tower. We don't know, because he's changed technologies, we do not know if he's on the purple shaded side, if he's on another sector. We don't know what sector he's on. Meaning that,
when you
right?
say change technologies, you're not saying Mr. Turner did something to his phone?
No,
to
sir.
change
It's
technologies?
like taking your phone from LGE to 5G. Or
You mean the network?
the network itself has done something. It's gone from essentially CDMA down to TDMA. It's gone from 2G or 3G down to analog. Indicative of these calls were all short durations, but we'd have to get a network engineer to tell us why it does that.
But if I'm understanding, from 9:52, or every voice call that we have reflected.
From 11 o'clock until
10:52.
from 10:52.
to 11:47.
Yes, sir. We can tell that his phone was utilizing that
He's
tower.
on his home tower, home base, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, sir.
And then we have 3 short calls where latitude and longitude for the tower is not provided because of the network situation. And all we can tell you is that he's on the same tower, but we can't tell you if it's home base because we don't know what side of the tower is.
We can't tell you. We can tell you he's on that tower, but not the sector or side of the tower that he's using. That the phone used for those 3 calls.
So, phone at home base till 11:47.
Yes, sir.
After 11:47, definitely at the home tower. We don't know if it's the same side.
Yes, sir.
Until 12 minutes. 12 minutes after midnight?
Yes, sir. That's the last one. If we go to the next slide. So this is 14 minutes after midnight. And so now the phone is not utilizing that same tower. It's changed to a different tower. The tower it's utilizing is actually in the middle of Windike Country Club. It's in the middle of the golf course. And the sector of the tower is facing north, or for that, it's Tower 106, Sector 1. So it changed towers. At 14 minutes after midnight, it went from one tower to the next tower.
So the phone is accounted for at home base until 11:47.
Yes, sir.
Then we start getting insufficient data from C-Spire.
Yes, sir.
The next time we know for sure, and we're provided sufficient data from C-Spire, is 12:14. Is that correct?
Yeah, 14 minutes after midnight on July 19th.
Which is 2 minutes after the homicide.
2 minutes after the 911 call.
And the phone's not at home base.
No, sir, it's not.
It's somewhere else. An entirely different tower?
Yes, sir. So we actually did a measurement between the 2 towers to show the distance. The tower on your far left to the tower that it's utilizing is about 2.87 miles apart. So we utilize that tool in our mapping system to do that. Again, it's approximate. But the phone stopped utilizing the tower on the left and instead utilizes the tower on the right. And is facing a different direction as far as facing north.
So 11:47. Then we don't know for sure. 27 minutes later, and entirely different tower that's reflected here in the purple.
Yes, sir.
And the homicide location is here.
Yes, sir.
All right.
We can go on to the next call. So wait, let me say here. So this tower, again, painting the picture, you got to look at it. So both of those towers are going to kind of over intersect. If you really did a drive test and got a true representation of the distance of those towers, there's not going to be that gap. That gap is there based on what we set as a default to put that cone out there, okay? So C-Spire is not going to allow that much gappage between the towers so that you have drop calls. So those two towers are going to overlay a little bit. And the tower that the blue arrow is pointing to, which is the 106 side 1, that tower is going to also go more up and left and a little bit more up and right. It's going to look more like a blob. If you imagine drawing a blob, that's what it's going to look like. Again, our mapping software just puts it in this pretty cone so we can get a representation of the signal strength. And all we can tell you is that his phone utilized that tower on that sector to connect to a call. I can't tell you if the phone was on Winchester. I can't tell you if the phone was exactly at the homicide scene, but it changed from what is close to his house to that other tower at 14 minutes after homicide.
So between 11:47 and 12:14, 14 minutes after midnight, that phone's moving.
Yes, sir. It's not stationary by his house. Because it's not going to jump 2.87 miles if he was still sitting in his living room, or if someone was sitting in their living room, or someone was over in that area. It's not going to jump 3 miles to the next tower. If that tower was overloaded or there was a problem, it would change sectors or it would drop the call.
Ain't no way it's jumping towers. What's the next slide?
Next. So here we did an analysis of Lorenzen Wright's 911 call and the cell tower usage for that night on July 19th. You can go next. So looking here now, these are AT&T towers. Again, the 911 call was placed at 12 minutes after midnight. With AT&T towers, we actually got a starting tower and an ending tower. So we can see that Lorenzen Wright's call started at the tower up in the north and then ended on the other side. Now, this is also an indication that this call was approximately less than a minute. I think it was about 40 seconds. But this shows you how he never moved, but his phone utilized 2 different towers. Okay? And you can see how they kind of intersect, and he's close to that intersection where it's at.
He's here at the border of these two things.
Yes, sir. And again, that's not the full signal strength of that tower. That's just an indication of the direction that the tower is facing, and the other tower is facing the other direction that you can call.
AT&T, they have entirely different towers than C-Spire?
Yes, sir. Each carrier has their own towers. C-Spire actually will, because they're a regional company, they actually will purchase bandwidth from other companies, other towers, so they don't lose coverage. So in the C-Spire records, you're going to see a Cricket tower, you're going to see a Sprint tower, you're going to see an AT&T tower. So you're going to see multiple towers.
And that's why the coverage areas are different than Billy Turner's, because they're different companies and
They're different towers altogether, yes, sir.
I understand.
So everybody's going to have the same honeycomb, but everybody's going to place their towers in a different spot. Next. So now we overlay Mr. Turner's mapping on the 19th at 14 minutes after midnight with Lorenzen Wright's 911 call. Go next. So here's the overlay. So I included the calls from 10:52 down to 12 minutes after midnight as a reference. And then you can see how at 14 minutes after midnight it jumps.
Okay, so this is what we saw earlier.
Yes, sir, that's just-
Up till 11:47 home base for Billy Turner.
I can tell you up till, yes, sir.
We can't say anything after 11:47.
We know it's hitting that tower, but we don't know what sector.
Okay, so 11:47 home base. This is what we saw earlier, 12:14.
That's at 14 minutes after midnight.
Phones moved.
Phone is moved.
And this light blue, I don't know what color that is, aqua maybe?
Yeah, that's
These-
Lorenzen's cell phone 911 call.
Okay, and
So
this
that's the
shows-
tower mapping. This is an overlay of Mr. Turner's call 2 minutes after Mr. Lorenzen's call to 911.
So the expected area, I know it's an area, the expected area of Mr. Turner's cell phone at 1214 overlays the same area that Lorenzen Wright's phone is using
When
at
he-
1212.
Yes, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, that's not his testimony. That's leading, number one, but it's not, that's mischaracterization of what he's just said. He said that they're not in the same sector at all.
We asked the question, Ms. Perry, he actually answered yes. So-
I didn't hear him answer.
He answered yes, so it
Can
can't be
he ask it again, just so I can hear it?
Yes,
It might
sir.
be a little bit, he's
You may
soft
ask,
spoken
you may
sometimes.
ask it again, but his answer was yes, so it can't
Okay.
be a mischaracterization because it said the answer was yes. You may proceed to ask the question again, Mr. Hagerman.
Judge, shall I answer again or just have the witness explain?
Why don't you explain, let me be easier.
What exactly is the question then? Sorry.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I got it right.
Okay.
So
Billy
it's
Turner's
two different,
phone-
yeah, it's two different carriers.
I understand,
Yes.
and we just had to clarify this. Billy Turner's phone up till 1147, I'm gonna say is accounted for as home base,
It's accounted for on that tower, on that sector, yes, sir.
which is this purple here.
That purple there.
Billy Turner's phone at 1214 is no longer at home base, it's in this purple sector.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Lorenzen Wright's phone, 1212, which is the time of the 911 call.
Yes, sir.
Its location is represented by these two, I didn't know the color and asked the question, like aqua.
Yes, sir. That is Lorenzen Wright's cell phone mapping for the 911 call.
So if I put Billy Turner's cell phone mapping for 1214 on top of Lorenzen Wright's cell phone mapping for the time of the 911 call, I see the purple overlay the aqua.
Yes, sir. So there are two different carriers, but the coverage is overlaying for C Spire and AT&T. Yes, sir.
In the same area.
In the exact same area, yes. And what's indicative of that is that the call starts on the tower facing down. The call ends on the tower facing to the right. If we start doing the math, it's a 40-second call. So you're talking 12:40 to 13 minutes after midnight. And then 1 minute later, Mr. Turner's getting a call, and his tower location is overlaying with that exact ending call tower that Mr. Lorenzen had. So they're in the exact same area, coverage area.
All right, next slide.
So I kind of hit on this a minute ago, but they asked me to do like a cell tower hot list, essentially, which is the most frequently used towers. And so with that, you can go next. So we looked at all the cell towers used. Tower 249 is considered the home tower. And then Tower 106, they called it the homicide tower. It was only used 85 times. That's just indicative of the tower was closest to his house.
Sorry, there. Hold that thought.
Yes, sir.
Deputy Smith tells one of the members of the jury indicate they need a break.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you cannot discuss this testimony with anyone or the case. Have you retired to the jury room for a few minutes, and we'll resume this testimony shortly. You can follow Deputy Smith, please. The jury is out. Sergeant Ross, I'm sorry. Evans, have you stepped down from the witness stand? We'll resume your testimony shortly. You cannot discuss your testimony with anyone over the break.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. This court is signed in recess. Everyone can remain seated. Clear the courtroom for me, please. ladies and gentlemen. Everyone can be seated. Sergeant Evans, come back and resume your seat on the witness stand, sir. You've been sworn in and you're still under oath to tell the truth, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you sent a note. You indicated that the current slide is not in our packet. Hopefully we corrected that because it was not in my information had either. And a lot of times what happens, you put stuff in the copy machine. I think Ms. Hagerman told us about 80 pages or so. And he had indicated that 70 pages have been copied for the jury. There's some concluding pages that may not be there. But a lot of times you put things in the copy machine that may have 80 some odd pages, and sometimes pages just don't get processed, they get stuck. So that may be what happened because I don't have those pages either, but hopefully that page that is on the screen now has now been provided to you. I think the next page may have been missing also, but hopefully that would take care of anything that may have been missing. I'm sorry, Mr. Hagerman. You may proceed.
Can we back it up on the slide? I think this is the first one there.
Yes, sir. You may proceed.
All right, cell phone records, cell tower hotness search. And now if we click forward, this was the second slide y'all were missing. All right, what do we see here, Sergeant Evans?
So we were just asked to look at all the tower usage for the records for the 31 days. So we ran essentially a report that tells us the most frequently used towers. So looking at this is not the whole report, this is just a snippet of it. But you can see it shows unknown as your very top one. Below that, the next tower is 249, and that was used 23% of the time, or 518 between July 5th and August 5th.
Is that what we were calling home base or whatever, or home tower, I guess?
Yes, sir. That was the tower that was closest to his house that was utilized the night on the 18th before the murder. Looking down the row, we get to Tower 106. We can see that it was only used 3.8% of the time, or 85 times for that 31 days. And that was the tower that was at the Windike Country Club in the golf course that was facing north. So they were just asking us to look at the usage of towers just to see the frequency that they're used. And that's all this reporting.
And that's the frequency of usage from July the 5th all the way to August the 5th?
Yes, sir. Next. That's it for that. So they asked us to analyze the day after the homicide, or the day of the homicide, July 19th. And so these are just, we didn't map towers out. This is just going to show you call records. You can go next. The importance of this was that we could see that on the 19th at 6 o'clock in the morning, or approximately 6 hours after the 911 call, Mr. Turner makes an outgoing call. He doesn't call Shara Wright's phone. He calls what we term to as Snoop's phone, or Lorenzen Wright Jr.'s phone.
It's 6 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
Outgoing being from Billy Turner's phone to Lorenzen Wright Jr. Snoop.
Yes, sir.
The duration of 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Yes, sir. 1 minute, 29 seconds.
All right, what else is highlighted? Oh, more calls.
So they asked us to look at the calls that were after the homicide to see if he was actually calling Shara on her phone, or was he calling Shara on a different phone? And we believe that he was calling Shara on the Snoop phone, or the Lorenzen Wright Jr. phone. You can see later in the day at 5 o'clock, or 5:52, 17:52 hours, he has an incoming call from that number. So now that person, or Shara, is calling him back on that number.
So it is back and forth, like Detective Brown testified to, between Billy Turner's phone and Snoop's phone.
Yes,
the day
sir.
after the homicide.
Yes, sir.
Good, next slide.
So now we're moving into the cell tower mapping of Mr. Jimmy Martin. So we were asked to map Jimmy Martin's cell towers and cell phone records. So again, I was provided that information from 2010. He actually utilized the cell phone carrier Verizon. So this is going to be his cell tower mapping for the same date range that we utilized for Mr. Turner. So next slide. So this is the breakdown or call report for that. We're gonna focus more on towards the bottom of the page where you see the highlights between 23, 44 hours. We're gonna focus on those calls towards the end of the 18th, into the 19th. We highlighted the top calls because those indicate the calls that were between Mr. Turner and Mr. Martin, based on Mr. Martin's cell phone records, not Mr. Turner's records.
And if we can go back to those just real quick. First call, 4:56 p.m. incoming, meaning
Incoming, meaning that Mr. Turner actually called Mr. Martin. That's the incoming.
Because we're looking at Mr. Martin's records.
Yes, sir.
And it has a duration of
38
38
seconds.
seconds, and what does that indicate to you?
It more than likely wasn't answered.
The next call is at 5:38, this is outgoing.
So this would be, 40 minutes later, Mr. Martin now is calling Mr. Turner back.
Has a duration of 1 minute and 42 seconds.
So that would definitely indicate that there was a conversation based on the length of the call.
And then the next call is.
Is outgoing again, that's at 18:14 or 6:14 hours on the 18th. And that's again, Mr. Martin calling Mr. Turner, and that call lasted for 4 minutes and 46 seconds.
Then you said we can skip down to these calls at the bottom between 11:44, 11:55, and then 12 minutes after midnight, is that correct?
Yes, sir, they asked us to analyze the same date range tower locations before the homicide, before the 911 call, and kind of right after it. So that's what we did.
And this is.
So at 11,
Billy
it's,
Turner calling Jimmy Martin at 11:44.
yes, sir.
And then Jimmy Martin calling Billy Turner at 11:55 and 12 minutes after midnight.
No, sir, the one outgoing after is a different number, so the actual
Oh, I'm
contact
sorry.
ID is a different one. We didn't identify that one.
The one in the middle is not.
Yes, sir.
I understand.
And then if you go down to the 12 minutes after midnight, that is Billy. That's Mr. Martin calling Mr. Turner at 12 minutes after midnight. And in between there is where you have the Batesville payphone calls that showed up on Mr. Turner's records.
So we're looking at Jimmy Martin.
We're looking at Jimmy Martin's records right now. So next slide. So this is a little bit harder to see based on, I thought we could zoom in a little bit more. But this is the calls for Mr. Martin and the cell towers. Now, if you notice that, to it on mine. This first call that we mapped is on the July 18th, 2010 at 11:44 p.m. And the tower usage is in Batesville, Mississippi.
So that phone's in basement.
Yes, sir. That tower, you're gonna see the next slide, but that call, yes, sir, the first tower used for that call is in Batesville, Mississippi.
Okay.
Do you have the next?
Martin's phone in basement.
So this is the starting tower is the one on the right, the ending tower is the one on the left, which is the next slide. So the phone is in Batesville, Mississippi still. This is again at 11:44 p.m. on July 18th, 2010.
Since there are two towers down here, does that mean the phone's moving around in basement?
Yes, sir. So that's the right without the bubble is the starting tower. The left with the bubble is the ending tower for that call. So that's one call, and the phone was traveling between those two towers.
All right, so 11:45 p.m. and 11:44 p.m. Jimmy Martin's phone is in Batesville, traveling around in Batesville.
Yes, sir. So the next slide, the call is at 11:55 p.m. And again, the phone is in Batesville. We go to the next one, and this is the call at 12 minutes, 12:12. So this is the call to Mr. Turner at 12 minutes after midnight. So this is the same time that Lorenzen Wright's calling 911. Jimmy Martin is calling Billy Turner from that. Now he's in Sardis. So he's gone up from Batesville to Sardis.
Batesville is here, Sardis here, Memphis further north.
We're about to see an overview. Yes, sir. The next slide. So there's your overview of the towers for Mr. Martin versus where the homicide is located. So we can see that he's in Batesville and Sardis, and then way up north of us is Memphis. So,
At the time of the homicide, he's at a tower in Sardis.
yes, sir. At 12:12, Mr. Martin's phone is calling Mr. Turner's phone at the same time that Mr. Lorenzen is calling 911.
With Jimmy Martin's phone being in Sardis.
Yes, sir. So, any more questions on that? All right. So we were asked to analyze what we call the cleanup, or the cleanup of the crime scene after the homicide. So this is the cell tower mapping for Jimmy Martin and Billy Turner, what we would call the cleanup, or the when they met up to do the cleanup after the homicide. So on July 21st, Mr. Martin drove from Batesville, Mississippi to Memphis, where at that point we do believe that he met up with Mr. Turner at Shara Wright's house. We're going to see the cell tower mapping that indicates that. Next. So these are the calls we're going to reference. And we just wanted to show the different calls on the 20th and the 21st that Mr. Turner and Mr. Martin were continually communicating throughout the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. They didn't just stop. We have records, like I said, of incoming calls. We have an outgoing call on the 20th, which is the very top two. Then coming down to the 20th, even at 10 o'clock, so 10:02, we have an incoming call from Mr. Turner to Mr. Martin. Then we look like we have a return call that same night at 23:27. And then moving down into the 21st, starting at 10:20, this is where we're going to see the cell tower mapping show Mr. Martin travel from Batesville, Mississippi, up Interstate 55, and around to where Shara Wright lived in Carter. So you go next. So this is the mapping. Next. So this is the first call down here at the lower left. This is going to show that he was starting to head up Interstate 55, or maybe 51 or 55. I would say it's 55.
And I hear that you're talking in sort of colloquial terms when you say he drove up. You don't know if he was driving a car or not, do you?
No, all we can tell from these records is that his cell phone utilized towers that ran along the interstate, and then ends up in the coverage area where Shara Wright's house was.
So when we talk about this, we can say that at...
You can say that on 7/21 at 10:20 a.m., his cell phone connected to a cell tower on Interstate 55, heading from Batesville towards Memphis.
Okay.
And based on the direction of the tower, it's facing north, which would indicate it's traveling north. Because if we look at the next tower, now he's connected to a tower closer to 55 and 240, or 240 and 69 or 70, whatever that's at. That's right there on the interstate. So we go to the next one. So now we're looking at 11:13 a.m. He's connected to a tower over there by Southwind High School. Again, we just referenced the homicide scene, so we have a point of reference and where Shara Wright's house is on the far right. We can go to the next one. Now this is the location where it actually shows him at 12:10. He is utilizing a tower at the bottom right that would have coverage potentially over Shara Wright's house.
And again, we saw Billy's records earlier. You can't place his phone actually inside that house or on the front yard or in the street in front, can you?
No, sir, I cannot.
You're saying his cell phone is in an area that has the same coverage as Shara Wright's house?
Yes, sir.
But up to this point, you can say that his cell phone traveled from Batesville to this area on 7/21.
Starting around 10 o'clock and ending at around 12:10 is when he's using that tower. If we look at the next slide. So now the tower's moving, so he is, I have to go back and look where we're at. He's now using the tower this is at 4:17 p.m., so when we got almost a 4-hour gap. Between 12:10, the next tower is at 4:07.
Okay, so
So
a 4-hour gap in his records?
there's just no call data. There's no voice data. So we don't know the phone, not saying it wasn't moving, we don't have any records in between 12:10 and 4:07 p.m.
So we're looking 4 hours later. It was in the area that had the same coverage as Sheriff's house.
Yes, sir.
And now we're looking at 4 hours later at somewhere else.
Yes, sir. 4 hours later, it's somewhere else. It's down here off of Bill Morris Parkway, kind of close to Bill Morris Parkway and Kirby Park. So the next tower is going to show at 4:17, and it's up closer to Poplar Pike. And then the next tower is back again around Kirby and 385. And that's that the one that's 716?
716.
Yes, sir. That should be the last tower for that day. Now go to the next slide. So this would show you an overview of the traveling of towers. So we start in Mississippi. We travel north to Memphis. We hit 240. Then we're going to travel down towards Southwind. Then we're going to travel towards the tower that has coverage over Shara Wright's home. Then we're going to travel back over here, and we're kind of encompassing an area that's close to the crime scene. That's around that is where his towers are located. Now there's a 4-hour gap between the 1210 and the 407. Then we have another gap. We have another call between 407 and like 417. Then there's another 3-hour gap until like 7 o'clock at night.
Okay.
So he's not utilizing his phone a lot that day.
There's at least 2 large gaps in coverage on 721 with regard to Jimmy's phone.
Yes, sir. Next slide. So this is the same time frame we looked at Mr. Turner's records. So again, July 21st, 2010. We go to next. So we looked at these records, and we noticed that he hit off at 12 o'clock to 12:21. He utilized towers 305 and 109. Okay, those are the C Spire towers. Tower 109 is the same tower that was used on the night that we believe he was at Shara's house before the murder on the 18th. He's kind of bouncing back and forth between these towers that are right next to her in the coverage area of her home. We can go next. So these are the towers that he's utilizing. So he's got calls at using tower 305, which if you point to where Shara's home is, that tower there. So that box above it, has calls at 12 o'clock and 12:03. And then if you go to the tower to the right of it, which is tower 109, he's got calls at 12:04, 12:05, and 12:20. So his cell phone is within those 2 different towers on those sectors that are facing the same direction.
How does that match up with Jimmy's phone at the same time?
If you go to the next slide. So that's the overlay or the next. Mr. Martin's phone at 12:10 is a tower facing the opposite direction of Mr. Turner's phone, but they both have coverage in the same area of Collierville.
Okay, so Shara Wright's house on Jimmy's.
Is to the left,
Shara Wright's house here.
is more to the right. So yes, sir. So again, 2 different carriers, 2 different cell tower locations, but they're both in the same honeycomb kind of coverage area. And they're both receiving calls or making calls at around 12:10 in the afternoon on the 21st.
Okay.
So next, we move on to Ms. Wright's iPhone exam from 2010.
And does the jury have copies to go further, or is that the end of the jury's copies? You have copies to go further, okay.
So in September of 2016, I was asked to examine Shara Wright's phone from 2010. So she had a much older iPhone in 2010. And so we got a search warrant. We examined that phone in September of 2016. We go forward. So this is just a summary, what it looks like. We have an extraction report. All this is telling you is the device. It's an iPhone 3G. It tells you the software version she was running back in 2010 was 3.1.2. It gives you a serial number of the phone. It can give you an IMEI number, so we're switching gears from records from carriers to a physical phone. So her IMEI number, go ahead. Oh, so the IMEI number is like a serial number for a phone. Everybody's phone has an IMEI number. We call it an equipment number. So it just validates that that's her phone. If we looked at her records, her IMEI number would match from her cell carrier to her cell phone. It's a way for us to verify and validate that the phone that we're looking at is the same records that we're looking at, the same person.
So you did a physical extraction on her phone?
Yes, sir, we did. Next. So this slide here indicates and tells you what was extracted. So if we're looking at the right side under content, we see calendar, cookies, instant messages. Now, instant messages, you're going to see a number of 295 and then a number beside that in parentheses that's red that says 83. The 83 is indicative of deleted messages that we were able to retrieve. So we had 295 instant messages. Of those 295 instant messages, 83 of those were deleted. That are-
So we think we can delete messages from our phone, but sometimes you can find them?
Sometimes we can. You also got contacts, device locations, notes, and then under data files, you've got audio, databases, and so on. But this is indicative of what our forensic software tool was able to examine or extract out of her phone, and then we used a different tool to analyze it. So next. So they asked us to focus on a timeline. So we did a timeline search. A timeline, what that tells me is I can pull up a timeline of any one of your phones, and I can see what you did today on it. I can see that at 6 o'clock in the morning your alarm went off. I can see that at 6:04 you looked at the news.
Well, wait a second, you need a warrant, stuff like that?
Well, yes, sir. Once we have a warrant, we can analyze your phone and go the timeline of everything that you did. So if you made a phone call at 7, searched the internet at 7:10, checked an email, it breaks it down timeline-wise what was done on the phone. So we ran a timeline search on her iPhone for looking really for instant messages between her and Billy Turner. We used the date range of the 18th to the 23rd. What we noticed on that is she had deleted all the messages between herself and Mr. Turner between July 18, 2010 and July 23, 2010. And we're going to show how we can tell it was deleted in a second. But that's where we reference that 295 messages, 83 of those were deleted, but we recovered those 83 messages that were deleted. Now, were there more messages? Probably. But our software only extracted and recovered and was able to parse out or analyze 83 of them. So next. So now we're going to look at the actual instant messages between Shara Wright and Billy Turner on July 18th, 2010. So what we're looking at here on the left is the actual message, what we can see. We can tell it came from the phone. It was on July 18th at 11:47 and 17 seconds. That is the offset for UTC -5, which is our central time zone offset with daylight savings. We can tell that it was a sent SMS message, and we can tell that it was a message sent to Billy Turner at his phone number, 239-3322. And we can see the body of the message reads, "I'm going to need my commission, ... Ren want you to bring your cards in the AM before he fly out, ... You owe me, boy, !"
This message was deleted by Ms. Wright?
If you look at the top left, the top arrow, there's a red X. The red X indicates that it was deleted and that our software was able to recover it. So this is essentially 28 minutes before the 911 call. This is part of where we talked about Mr. Turner's records only showed voice, so we didn't see the text messages. This is more than likely an iPhone to an iPhone message. But these are the messages between Shara and Billy that night. Next. Mr. Turner then responds at 11:49 and 04 seconds. Okay. So again, we can tell that at the top left it was deleted by the X. We can tell the date time is 7/18/2010 at 11:49, or 2 minutes after she sent the text. And then you've got, it was to Mr. Turner, or I'm sorry, from Mr. Turner. So this came from him to her. And then the body of the text was okay. And go back. I'm sorry, go back one. Nope, you're good. Go back one, up one. There you go. So under status, so we have source is phone, subject is blank, timestamp, status. The status indicates that the message was read. So if y'all have been sitting here all day for several days, if someone's texting you right now, you've not looked at your phone and have not read that message. So if I examined your phone today, right now, the status would read unread. When you go home tonight, you check all your messages that you've missed all day,
Oh, they don't get to do that.
and you click on, okay. Next week when you're done and you check your messages, the status would change. What that's indicating to us is that she read the message. So she received that message from him, read it on her phone. It's not just something that was never opened or read. Go forward. So Next, we did a timeline search for Shara Wright, Jimmy Martin. We found 14 instant messages between Shara and Jimmy. The date range was July 15th to July 17th, 2010. And again, all the instant messages between Shara and Jimmy were also deleted on Shara's iPhone. So she's deleted the messages between Mr. Turner, deleted the messages between Mr. Martin. Now, in Shara's iPhone, she had Jimmy Martin's phone number saved under the contact Edna J. So it wasn't Jimmy Martin. You look at her contacts, it doesn't come across as Jimmy Martin, it comes across as Edna J. Just so we would clarify that. Next. So now this is several days before the homicide. This is July 16th, or 7/16/2010, at approximately 1:28 in the afternoon. And this is Shara sending a message to Jimmy saying, "I know you tired of me in my party, but what's up?" I don't know if you need me to go into any other detail about the party. And
Date is 7/16?
yes, sir, July 16th. So go next. Now this is him responding back to Shara. So it's from Jimmy Martin. That same day, a couple of minutes later, at 1:30 in the afternoon, so about 4 or 5 minutes later, "You're good, everybody's straight." Now we believe this is a code talk between Shara and Jimmy. Next. I'm sorry, go back one. So you can see again the status shows that she did read that message. It was an SMS, so she got the message. All right, go forward. And then later, that same day, a couple hours later, Jimmy sends her another text that says, "Don't forget my wallet."
Same day?
Same day.
Alright.
Next. So, overview of that, her 2010 iPhone 3G, we didn't get as much data as we would off an iPhone today. But the data that we did extract, like I said, we did get some deleted text messages. We didn't get a lot of location data. We were able to get some message data between her and Jimmy and her and Billy Turner. So moving forward, they also asked me to analyze this would be Shara Wright's iPhone 6S Plus. Now this was after she was arrested. And this phone exam occurred in June of 2019.
Right, so what we saw before was an analysis of her cell phone that she had in 2010.
Yes,
at
sir.
the time of the murder.
At the time
right?
of the murder.
This is one she has at the time of her arrest in 2019?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The jury has that, and the information that was given to them, because I don't either, so you might want to take some time to make sure it's explained satisfactorily to the jury, because I don't think they have those pages.
Let's go back to the page before it. I know that you added some pages into the PowerPoint after we copied everything.
Yes, sir.
Because everybody asked you to do that, so it's not your fault.
Yes, sir.
Did you have occasion to examine another cell phone belonging to Shara Wright?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when did you examine that?
In June of 19.
And what cell phone was this that she had?
This was her personal phone at the time she was arrested.
Right, and to your knowledge, was she arrested in 2016?
It was 2000. It should have been, I think it was 2017 or 18.
2017.
17.
2017. That phone was taken from her at the time?
Yes, sir.
Search warrant prepared?
Yes, sir.
And y'all extract information of her phone in 2019?
Yes, sir, we did.
All right, are we going to see some of what you found in the phone?
Yes, sir, we are.
All right.
So, we utilized the forensic software tool GrayKey to conduct the extraction of her iPhone 6S Plus. What we found on that is the device information. So her device's name was Shara's iPhone. The phone number at the time was the 346-219-1148. Again, it shows her IMEI number. Her operating system version was 10.2, and we were able to obtain her passcode of 1104. So we identified all that. Next. This is just a breakdown of the actual extraction report from GrayKey. So it just shows you kind of what I went over. It's going to show you the phone number, the device name, the operating system. It's going to show you the IMEI number, And I didn't include it, but it would also show you the password. This indicates when we initially, it's an event log. So when did we plug the phone into the software? What did the software do? When was the software finished? That's what it is. At that point, we have a zip file of the extracted data. We take the zip file and we auto-load that into another software program. Next. So the zip file that we extracted from Gracie of her phone, we use Cellbrite Physical Analyzer to then analyze the actual phone data. Next. This is a device information sheet of that phone. Just an overview of essentially here she had her message retention duration set for forever at the very top. This tells you her settings on her phone. It has her ICCID number, it's got her IMEI number, her unique identifiers, her Apple ID is towards the bottom. So this just gives you an overview of the data that was extracted out of the device. Next. All right, so we saw in 2010 what we got. This is what we got in 2019.
You get a lot more nowadays.
Yes, sir.
Anything in particular that has some web history? Is that right?
Yes, sir. We were asked to analyze the web history on the device. So we actually went through everything, but we've got chats, device identifications, passwords, web bookmarks. We've got contacts, emails, searches, web history. The web history, you see there's 6,077 that was obtained, and of that, 3,454 were deleted. So again, everything that you see in parentheses that's red, the user has deleted.
Let me ask you before we get to the web history, was she ever using this phone, the one that she was found
17?
17? Was she ever using this phone to contact Billy Turner?
No, sir, she was not. We did not find communication between her and Billy Turner on this device.
On this device?
Yes, sir. We can
Let's
move
look at
forward.
web history.
So on or about 12/5/2017, this is when actually Mr. Turner was arrested. The police department released all the media releases about his arrest and the gun. We then analyzed her web history around that same time, so that would be 12/5, 12/6, and 17. What she started searching on December 6, 2017 was indictment definition, Billy Turner. And then she searched through fingerprints, stay on objects that are underwater. She also did various other searches related to the homicide of Lorenzen Wright. Next slide. So this is a snippet of the actual searches themselves. So on 12/6/17, at about 6:50 in the morning is when it starts. She starts searching for how long do fingerprints last in water. Finger marks on glass.
See, water washes fingerprints underwater. Fingerprints stay on objects that are underwater. Finger marks on glass and metal surfaces recovered from stagnant water. How long do fingerprints last underwater? Can a weapon, she misspelled it.
She has, yeah, her first one, she was a little nervous, or she mistyped.
Can a weapon have prints after 7 years? Okay.
Now, she also didn't utilize just the traditional Google for all of these searches. We can see that on the one third down from the top, fingerprints underwater, question mark, she used a message board to search that.
So she's searching Yahoo and other stuff like that?
She's searching, yes, sir. She's using multiple search forms, search tools to try and, indication from us is that you don't want everything in Google. So you're going to go to a different message board and start searching things.
What do we have after that?
Next slide. So this is actually, if we went through and looked at her phone on 12/6.
And this is 12/6 is the day or the day after Mr. Turner's arrest?
Yes, sir.
And that was the same day as the searches we just saw on the previous page?
Yes, sir. She continuously searches Billy Turner, indictments, guns underwater. She actually searched this courtroom. She actually searched Judge Coffey. She searched everybody that was related to this investigation at the time. And it's just search after search after search after search. Now, this is just a snippet of that. But
all on the same day that she's searching for the prints on a weapon underwater?
yes, sir. It's just, we can scroll on and on and on the whole day she's searching. I mean, you can tell it's every couple minutes, every minute.
You can proceed to the next slide. I think we get the point.
That was it. But that's she was constantly searching things on her phone for this investigation.
Your outlines might pick up on the screen, because mine just did. Maybe see what's
I'm sorry, what just happened?
I told the jury that their outline they have might pick up on the screen is now
Oh,
been
okay.
shown.
And the final thing, Detective, is actually something that we actually already have in evidence, but I think you put it in a form that's a little easier for us to read, and it hasn't been published to the jury yet, so that I'm gonna have you publish, me and you will publish this.
Okay, I was asked to analyze Jimmy Martin's Facebook messages. So I was provided a zip drive or a zip file and a PDF file of his Facebook returns. So if someone, they did a search warrant, got his Facebook records or Facebook messages. So people can utilize Facebook Messenger to text. Instead of me using a traditional cell phone, I can text you through Facebook, and I can text you through Instant Messenger. And so they asked us to take the messages, analyze them, and see what we could find.
And are these gonna be messages from back in 2010?
Yes, sir, they are.
These are records that were obtained as part of the original investigation, is that right?
Yes, sir. So again, we use the same software tool that we did with the phone exam, so you're gonna see sort of the same look. So this is Cellbrite again. We're able to auto-load the Facebook records into Cellbrite. From there, we were able to obtain 130 calendar notifications. We had 484 chats, with 172 being deleted. 2,283 for social media. We had call logs, contacts, users. So this is the data that was obtained from the Facebook records.
And these are Jimmy Martin's Facebook records.
Yes, sir. These are Jimmy Martin's records. Next.
All right, so did y'all find messages between Jimmy and Shara?
Yes, sir. So Shara's Facebook is listed as Shara Robinson, not Shara Wright. But yes, sir, we were able to find messages between Mr. Martin and Ms. Wright, and she
And you-
uses the name Robinson.
You aware was at one point she was married and
Yes.
her name was Robinson?
Yes, sir.
That's not a alias.
No, it's not an alias. She uses the Robinson name on her Facebook.
And
We were able to basically extract just these two participants. So instead of looking at all the messages in a timeline, we basically said, okay, give us Shara Robinson, Jimmy Martin, their messages between each other. We're going to see the flow of bubbles for all their messages. And you're starting on June 16th, 2010 is the first message. And that message would be Shara Wright sending Jimmy a message, good looking out, thanks. And then the flow goes from there.
okay.
Now, my snips of this, you're going to see the last bubble as the first bubble on the next slide, just to indicate we didn't skip a bubble. So you're going to see it, it's going to repeat itself.
I got you. Print it out so you see when you go to the next page.
Yes,
print it out.
because if we were looking at this on our machine, we would just be able to scroll. We can't scroll on a PDF. So next. So they asked us to look at this message here on July 4th, 2010. So this is Shara texting Jimmy. And she's talking about, man, she says, man, you driving me crazy with this party. We keep getting our days and times mixed up. What are you gonna do? We got all our end. What else you need? Because I can't find another DJ this late. I want to talk. I want to do it before the 18th because we got a family reunion and other stuff coming up. Give me a holler back. Let me know something. And something is in all caps and an exclamation.
I think council's described it before as obviously some sort of crude code. Is that, you get that impression?
Yes, sir.
Next message.
So that same, well, actually a couple days later on the 7th, Mr. Martin replies, so what's this? So this, what's up? 300 USD left. Towel in Florida. Had the concert there. You want me to go to party, adult theme, but the party has kids. When is it going to be an all adult party, or how to plan around that? Also got a plan around my contacts there, then a rental, question mark. Yeah, it's very coded.
To your knowledge, was Shara Wright ever planning a party that she was going to have rappers and DJs come to?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Next. So again, on the 7th, she replies back, it's okay to throw a party outside, question mark. And his response to that is, all right, gotcha. Next. She then, on the 7th, now they're going back and forth. Kids in and adults out. Let me know what you think. Still on the 7th, Mr. Martin replies, don't know, just concerned about the noise and the neighbors. But I'll have to work it out I'll have to work it out if no other way. So he's talking about noise and neighbors. Next. So this goes on to the 7th, they're still talking. She says, cool, ... love you, ... thank you for everything. I'm assuming it's everything. It's every with a T. She then actually corrects herself, everything ... I owe you. And then they don't communicate from the 7th to the 13th. So you're looking at almost a 6-day gap. And she's texting him, what's up? And then she texts him again on the 13th. We still on? Question mark. Next. Then he replies back on the 14th, the next day. Tying up loose ends, moving studios, changing off plan. Your artist can't find any equipment. He can't trade or sell my big keyboard, but that's what I'm trying to do. The other two are cool, but I need a 9-inch studio monitor. Don't want people sweat and stuff bumping up in the noon AC joint.
In the non-AC joint.
We're gonna have to rent something to haul all this. Too much hassle cleaning up. Don't want to be riding dirty. Then the money gotta come over our ass.
Gotta cover.
Cover our ass, I'm sorry. It's hard to read it. She then replies back to him on the 14th, you need money for something? I got $200. He replies back on the 14th, trying to find them monitors.
It's actually
Try to find them monitors. Does our speakers, everybody use them? I can't find them around here. Can't afford new ones. Let me know. He should be able to help. Then I'll scoop him and we good.
7/14.
That's on the 14th. Next. So again, we're going to skip the top one. That was the last one, the previous one. Shara replies on the 21st. So
And now the murders happened. So it's murder happens on 7/18, turned into 7/19. This is 2 days later on 7/21.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Shara replies, I give up. Nothing is working out. ... Everything us too high, including getting the pool up and running. Memphis pool trying to put a dent in my pockets. I know you done helped me. I done helped and I done worried you, but I think I'm gonna quit. I'm sick of this party. In the meantime, maybe I will plan for after the family reunion. Please let your artist know I'm serious, but just not ready right now.
And he responds. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go back. He just responded the next day with, you need to call your auntie.
Yeah,
He never responds to that.
Well,
He responds the day after.
The next chain is
You need to call your auntie?
7/22.
Yep.
He says you need to call auntie.
Now, this is all going to be around the time on 7/21 when Mr. Martin drove to Memphis. So it's all the same day. Next. You got it.
You found it?
You found it. What's good? And that's the end of the conversations.
All the way
To the end. Yes, sir, we have.
I got no further questions, Sean.
Council Clerk, please. for you.
All right.
Thank you. Make sure it doesn't get out. Is this your copy? Yes, sir. I'll put a big staple in it so we can make sure that it doesn't get loose. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about 4:21, 4:22, and I asked Ms. Thomas and Mr. Perry about how long they thought their cross-examination would be, because I don't want to limit lawyers in cross-examination. Ms. Perry told me it might take a while. I believe Sergeant Evans has been testifying for a while on direct examination, so I don't want to limit the cross-examination. I don't want you working too late tonight because we're here for a pretty long time last night. So we're going to start tomorrow. I've been here too long. We're going to start tomorrow morning at 9:30. Again, we don't have very much docket set this week, and we've actually been waiting for 10 o'clock every morning to get here before we can start trial. So we're going to start trial tomorrow morning at 9:30. You cannot discuss the case with anyone. You cannot discuss the case amongst yourselves. Let me know how your food is. Let me know if the accommodation is okay. Let me know if the deputy is still treating you well. And we'll resume trial tomorrow morning at 9:30. Take all your belongings with you. Take your trial notebooks with you. Let me know if you need more paper, too. And we'll see you in the morning at 9:30. Thank you all. Sergeant Evans, I'll have a step down from the witness stand. We'll see you back in the morning at 9:30. You cannot discuss your testimony with anyone over the break tonight, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your presence today. Yes, sir. Do we need to, can I adjourn court, or do you need to approach? Okay. And for the record, the jury is out, and the lawyers just told me they need to approach, and we'll address that as soon as we adjourn. Anything else we need to discuss before we have this conference off the record and before we resume tomorrow morning?
No, sir, yeah.
This court stand adjourned to 9 o'clock Thursday morning, March 17, 2022 for the regular calendar, and we will start trial tomorrow morning at 9:30. Indicated earlier, we have very small dockets this week, and we're resetting most of the docket other than Jill Raymond's, and probably we're spending about 30 minutes or so just waiting for 10 o'clock. So we'll start at 9:30 tomorrow morning. We'll make sure we get the press in, so get the mics tested and get everything else tested before we start trial. We're starting adjourned to tomorrow morning.
All right.